words on what is humanism. Humanism is a simple philosophy. It is an ethical life stance which focuses on human values, being good without God. It is about taking responsibility and treating others with respect while living our one life. And if you would like to know more about humanism, you can find that in the Amsterdam Declaration, which is available online, and you will also find it on our website, www.humanism.ie, where you'll find out lots more about our campaigns and everything that we strive to be. And now, without further ado, I would like to say hello to our speaker, who thankfully is there.
So my name is Mia Defuicha, and I am a survivor activist on the sex trade. I spent 6 years in the sex trade in Dublin. I left it 13 years ago now. Since I'm currently the training lead at Ruhama, Ruhama is Ireland's national organisation that supports women affected by prostitution, sex trafficking, or sexual exploitation. So we also have a number of women who have forced marriage, would be victims of forced marriage. So I'm the training lead there, so I spend my time great awareness of training frontline workers, doctors, guards, nurses, people from other NGOs, teachers, social workers, etc. Anybody who needs the training. So that's what I do now. So it's kind of been full circle because Ruhama has been in my life since 2003 because they used to, although they don't anymore, they used to have a van that used to come out at night, volunteers, and they would give you a cup of tea or a Kit Kat and chat and show a lot of kindness to us. Well, where I stood was the Burlington Road. That's where I spent, and such a beautiful street, leafy suburb, gorgeous. But at night it was something very different. So, you know, I was there 6 years. So now it is it's just great to now be part of the team. For the organisation that was there at the worst of times.
Okay, so you maybe I guess even look at even before you know Dublin and the Burns. So what's your background? I'm sensing not from Dublin in the accent. I do speak Spanish and German, so I love to get an accent. So where are you from originally?
Well, I'm from Dublin.
Okay.
I'm from Dublin, yeah, and
the name is
the name is Irish. It's Irish.
Okay. So I thought there was. I thought like there was. So you're fully
well.
Okay.
It's Irish via the Vikings, so Normandy. So
okay, so you're actually from Dublin.
That's where I think it gets. That's where I think it gets the DF or the DE, the small D in front. Yeah, so no, it's Irish. No, I grew up in Dublin, but my mother is grew up in South Africa.
Ah, so there is a connection.
So I think sometimes when I'm speaking publicly, I sometimes sound like my mother for some reason. Yeah.
There you go. So there is very good. So grew up in Dublin, brilliant. And yeah, so like in terms of Ruhama, you mentioned you've been aware of them since 2003. You maybe kind of start, maybe like a little bit about how they came into your life and what they meant when you first encountered them.
They came in when that was my contact, the van on the street, and it would have been yeah, it would have been. I wouldn't have been out there long. They used to come out maybe a couple of times a month, and like I say, they have a chat and a kind word and a cup of tea, and you know, it's just some human contact. Because in prostitution, your human contact, you know, it becomes the men who buy you to sexually exploit you, and the other may be addicted, and women beside you. So you know, that becomes your only human contact, and it's not the healthiest, let's say. So they were these lovely volunteers, just showing some humanity in a place that we didn't see a lot of it. So yeah, it was greatly appreciated. Yeah. So
And you know, so your first impression of Ruhama then was, you know, that type of engagement. What made you want to scratch under the surface a bit more then, vis-a-vis, you know, who you were at that time, and about, you know, looking at them a little bit more under the bonnet to see if they would align with, you know, your next part of your journey, and what was the trigger to go, I'd like to know a bit more about Ruhama.
Well, when I exited prostitution, I was with the help of a social worker. It wasn't a case that I had you know, some sort of epitome and thought, oh, I've enough of this life. I couldn't see a way out. So many of us don't. Because you've been cut off from mainstream society for a long time, maybe, and we also know what the world thinks of us. We know the names we're called. So when they're the messages you receive from the outside world, well, then it's hard to know if you're welcome back. So I couldn't see, I kind of didn't know who I was then, never mind who I would be if I ever managed to leave. So I often say that we were in chains everywhere, but they're invisible chains, you know. So, but I did manage to meet a social worker. My daughter was ill and needed some care, and I met her in that context. And yeah, she was very different, because I would have had a very guarded front. I wouldn't have trusted a lot of people, especially those in authority, and but she was different, and she just asked me two questions. I didn't realize at the time that those two questions were to change the course of my life, and they were simple, but they were very human, and so was she. And she said to me, I want to know what life is like for you, and what's it like to be out there at night all alone. And that day she asked me, I think I thought she was, I didn't know what to think. I kind of left the office very quick, but I came, her words wouldn't leave my head, and I kept thinking about them, and so I went back and I spent 6 weeks telling her what life was like for me. I told her things I'd never told anybody, and at the end of that, she asked me if I trusted her enough to make a phone call on my behalf. So I said, yeah. I knew at that moment that that woman could see things I couldn't. And I trusted her, because we don't trust a lot of people in that world. And, you know,
If I may ask you, sorry to interject, but when you mean trust, what can you elaborate a bit, because it sounds like that was a, you know, a big moment when you found somebody, as you said, you know, that you could trust.
Yeah, well, I suppose I knew she understood how I had come to be where I was, and didn't judge me because of it, if that makes sense. I knew she had my best interest in heart, you know, at heart, and that and she could see things that I couldn't, you know, and she was kind and very human, and yeah. So I did. I trusted her, and so I trusted her to make that phone call, because I knew that she would put me in the hands of people who would, you know, support me.
And why do you think it was her over others at the time?
I think it was a few things. I think I met her in the context of I wasn't Lucy. Lucy was my name on the street. I wasn't Lucy. So I wasn't dressed as Lucy. I wasn't in that mode as Lucy. Um, and I was just Mummy, and I was Mia, and it was in the daytime, and I had ordinary clothes on, and so that's one thing. Because if you meet a lot of us, if you meet us in that mode, you don't sometimes meet us. You meet whoever we are on the street. We usually pick different names. And with disassociation, then that's the mode you take, because you wouldn't it's very hard out there that if the volunteers on the van, although kind and nice, but they wouldn't delve into your life as such, because you're not going to. You're not going to make that. You're not going to be vulnerable out there, because you won't survive. You won't survive out there if you say what life is really like, you know, at 12 o'clock at night, when you've going to be bought 20 minutes later and in a position of you know, you won't. It's very hard. So being away from the street or from a bottle or whatever is important if you connect with someone, you know, because you're in a different, your head is in a different place. And then just taking that time, to she let that time that I had to. I think she had a sense that I didn't trust her, but I knew she was different, and she just gave me that space. She didn't like, oh, you're involved in prostitution. I know this organization, so there you go. It's really important, that holding space before you're passed on to someone else. And what I'm always saying in the training to the frontline workers, if someone does disclose something to you or share something with you, it's for a reason. They've picked you for a reason. There's something about you that they trust. So hold it. Don't just pass it off. You know, don't just refer and tick that box. It's very important to hold it. And then, so that was that. So I went to, that was really why, those things. So she did make that phone call, and a couple of weeks later, I was in St. Michael's in Beaumont for a medical detox, and then I went to the Rutland, straight to the Rutland, and I was there for 5 weeks, and then I worked with the clinical psychologist there. I couldn't join their aftercare program because of the disassociation. I was still referring to Lucy in the third party, and I kind of had to own all that. And so I worked with her for about 3 months to conquer that. And then I thought, what am I going to do in my life? And I remember I had kept the bag I used to bring to the street, and in it was the little cards that Ruhama give out, you know, like business cards. So I remembered the kind people on the street, and I picked out the card and I rang the number.
And at that time, when you came across them, would it be fair to say that there wasn't much structure support in general? Like it was people like Ruhama or the lady or person who engaged with you that were going at it, were going out of their way or looking to find a way to support because support wasn't there?
Well, Ruhama is there since 1989, but so it was there, but I didn't, when you meet them, like I said, you're meeting them at night, you're meeting them, you might be in a different place, so it's hard. We're hard to well, somebody's saying we might be hard to reach because of that trust issue. But it is the only specialized service. Obviously there's drug service. I was addicted to heroin. Well, so there are drug services, but it's much better now than it was back then. But sexual exploitation of women who are addicted, it was kind of the unspoken. They knew it happened, but it was like nobody kind of spoke about it, and there wasn't any specialized. It was just, sometimes it was just, oh, well, that's what they do. You take drugs, you lose all your morals. It was looked at in that way, and of course you don't. And it's different now. It's different now, thank goodness. But there's much more understanding about the exploitation. It's quite, because it's a paradox, really, because you go in thinking that you'll solve. Well, I'll just do this, and I'll save, and I'll go to the UK, and I'll get clean, and it'll just take a few months, and that was my thinking going in. Although I always say I was addicted to a mind-altering substance, and you didn't make good decisions when, but that 3 months turned into 6 years because of all the stuff that happens while you're there. Realistically, I had no idea of what the world I was going to step into.
Yeah, because one of our audience members just asked, how or why did you end up, in it, right?
It is, yeah. It was. I got addicted to heroin, and I'm a bit of an outliner because it was. I was 32. I'd never taken a drug in my life, and I was in a relationship with someone, and they were clean, and then they weren't clean, and you do all the things, try. It's so different. I had been. I'd worked for the drug service, and so anyway, you're crossing lines. I was, getting her buying methadone on the street, or then making deals with her. Just take this, don't take the car, and have my bank card, and blah blah blah. And this went on, but she slipped quite chaotically, really, and I think I crossed one line, I was closer to the next, and then I remember I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't think, and I was trying to, hold up my job, and all the rest. And she said, "Well, you should take some and just sleep." And I was going, "No, no, Jesus, look at the state, I'm not taking that." And but a couple of weeks later, the same process, trying to keep her, and I did smoke it, and slept like a baby. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to get addicted, because it's not like a buzz for me. It's not I'll just say I get a couple of nights sleep a week, and I'll be fine. I'll be able to figure this crap out. Of course, 2 nights a week turned into 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week, and then about 3 months later, I was sick in work, and it was April, and I remember thinking, "Oh, who gets a cold in April?" Like, but my ex said, "Oh, you're sick," like it was heroin, and I remember I left work early, and I bought 2 bags of heroin, because I was keeping her in a B&B, because she couldn't live with me, because she was chaotic, and my daughter was there, and I smoked a few lines, and I felt better, and I just thought, "Oh my God, what have you done? What have you done?" Like, And I got in the car and I remember driving to Doyle's, you know, at the top where you can see the whole of Dublin, and looking over and sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm now addicted to the substance because I worked in a detox unit, to the very substance. Yeah, so that's how. And I mean, I did get clean in that summer, cold turkey, and but I didn't remove the craziness from my life, and you know, I slipped back, and eventually, you know, the job I adored, I absolutely loved my job. It was gone. I wasn't fired or anything. I chose to leave. We made a deal and I left because I hadn't done anything illegal as such. And and there I was, 33, addicted to heroin. The job I loved, gone. And yeah, everything kept crashing down, really. And I look back now, and a part of me wants to give myself a good shake and say, "What the were you thinking of?" But so prostitution, you know, it's yeah, it was just something. I thought you know, your money goes, and you think, right, and you're mixing with people who maybe have delved in it, and you think, okay, well, it'll be 3 months. I had no idea. You know, and it took me a while to think, but my ex was really, her behavior was quite pimp-like. So there's that goes with it. In fact, there's a lot of women in prostitution where there's a drug addicted partner, usually male. Mine just happened to be a female, but yeah, usually male. That's so yeah, so that's how.
So then, you know, like you obviously experienced the sex trade, and then you found this opportunity to look at a way to navigate a pathway out or understand where you were. What was that feeling like when you realized I have an opportunity to change or mend or fix or move on? And was it Ruhama right then that, or did you do something else before becoming so involved with Ruhama?
No, well, I mean, once I finished with the Rutland and I rang Ruhama and I got a caseworker, Jennifer, and so every woman that comes to Ruhama is assigned a caseworker that works one-to-one. So based on your situation, care plan is built. You know, for me, I was fortunate than many of the women that come to Ruhama in that I had a full education, I had a roof over my head, I'd always had kept my home. I just remember my father used to always say, keep the roof over your head and the lights on. They were the two things you had to pay, your rent and your lights. And so I had a lot in. And so they were a little bit, well, what are we going to do with her? You know what I mean? But
And yeah, sorry, like, just to that point, I mean, you know, you're talking all about yourself here, but the people around you, like family and friends, were you able to lean on them? And when they saw the Ruhama connection, did they go, okay, we can support that? What was that like?
It is. It takes a family sometimes a long time some families to forgive you for bringing such shame to them, to the family. So took that took time. Not my father, because my father was wonderful. My father used to ring me at night, and I'd always say, "I'm just going home," and because I didn't want him to. I knew he would sleep, you know, and that he wouldn't be worried about me. Of course, I wasn't going home, but at least my dad got to sleep. But yeah, so contact was very little. Um, so that takes time. I think it's still a work in progress. Uh, so it's some understanding when I started to speak publicly, and my sister, found some of the stuff that had happened to me while I was in there in the prostitution, and so it puts a different now. There is much more understanding, but it takes time.
So between, that, looking at maybe internally and looking externally, what was it then that you wanted to look at the campaigning? I know you
Yeah.
talked about the campaign part for Beyond Exploitation,
Well,
and
it's
and then the Turn Off the Red Light campaign. So where did you find the strength and the energy to go, okay, I'm gonna look at this myself and see what I can
yeah.
bring and add.
I I after I with Jennifer the caseworker, and they eventually got a lecturer from DCU to come out, and she had said, "Did you ever think of going to university?" So once, and I said, "Yeah." So I did an access program, and then I went to study philosophy in Maynooth, and I picked philosophy because I wanted to know what it meant to be human. I had so many questions about good, bad, evil. I think when you're exposed to such human wickedness, it changes the way you see the world, and I had big questions. And then I didn't realize when you study philosophy, your whole life is full of questions. You wake up every morning with questions. Uh, Once you learn to think, and but
I think you said you really loved, the minute in terms of the group of people you were around, right? And the types of debates and discussions and
oh, I loved it. I loved it. It was a dream. I loved it. I loved my philosophy lectures, and they were so good to me. And they were so, yeah, they really, oh goodness, they were, I didn't realize that Aristotle was a great psychotherapist. So I
you
learned
felt you felt
so.
the you felt the empathy, right?
I absolutely, and of course, one of my lecturers, that was her specialty, is empathy and human dignity. And I remember going to her office, and she had published a book, "The Problem with Human Dignity," on human dignity, it's called. And she passed it over to me. She says, "You can have that." And I said, and I knew it was like about 50 euros or something. I didn't have that. And she said, "No, it's for you." And I opened the cover, and it said, "Dear Mia, uh, because it belongs with you, and that human dignity." And she said, it's rare, like that you had to reclaim your own human dignity." So that was her book, and so I think I kept that book in my bag. I brought it to university every day because human dignity.
What a lovely touch.
Yeah, they were Maynooth, the philosophers in Maynooth, the philosophy department were absolutely amazing. But there was another part of my life that I couldn't move on, is that I had left all my friends behind. And in particular, my friend the last 18 months who was trafficked, and I couldn't, what can I do? I left him behind. What can I do? And at the time, Ireland was reviewing its laws on prostitution because there was a growing number of migrant women and evidence of criminality and violence, etc. And so they said they would review it. So the Department of Justice were looking for submissions. So I wrote a submission as to what it was like and why I think we need to stop it. I couldn't justify the violence. I just couldn't justify anything that I had witnessed. And then the Turn Off the Red Light campaign was launched in 2011, and I joined it in the next year, because that first year or so, it takes time to recover. And it was the campaign was to do what Sweden did, and which was it's sometimes known as the Nordic model, just because it originated there. and
And
to
what was the
criminalize.
premise? What was the premise of it?
Well, it's kind of a three-pronged effect. One, you criminalize the purchase of sex, because you recognize the complete power imbalance, and two, you decriminalize anyone who finds themselves in a position of selling, because again, you know, it would be unjust to continue to criminalize people for their own exploitation. And three, you provide exit supports and systems which allow people who wish to leave. So it took 6 years, and it was passed. It's the Sexual Offences, Criminal Law Sexual Offences Act 2017, and I did go back and study law in those 6 years as well, in Maynooth as well. And
You're busy.
well, I had to understand. Now I remember when my lecturer says, you know, philosophy does this, but law brings it in. It's, you know, it's so. Anyway, it did pass in March 2017. So since 2017, it's illegal to attempt or to purchase another human being for sex, and it's not illegal to sell sex. And we have there's a piece of exiting research coming out in December, so we're looking for statutory funded exit routes, and we will get them. But our first safe house in Ireland was opened on Monday, first 2 residents for sex trafficking victims. So that was it. Also, I had at that stage, by 2017, I had 2 little granddaughters, and I wanted a world to. I wanted them to grow up in a country whereby the bodies they're born into is respected, and it's never up for sale like their granny. And you know, because I think if it's, I just think that for men and women and humans to be equal, then one side can't be purchasable in a commodity sense. And I think if you leave it that way, then that sends a confusing message that there's these type of humans and there's these type of humans, and one, their body should be respected and consent and all of this that we hear, and the others, you know, are, and I just didn't want them to grow up in, I just wanted them to grow up in a different Ireland. I don't know why I'm getting emotional, probably because I'm talking about my granddaughters, but
Oh, listen, like,
I think
yeah,
grandchildren touch a special place in your heart.
yeah. I think children in general, yeah, you know. I was teaching at the weekend while I was doing a teacher's course in Shannon, and teaching small children, you know, swimming, because I'm doing different levels of tutor and teaching, and I was saying to my wife, like, when you see children of a certain age, you know, 4, 5, 6, and you look at them and go, my gosh, you know what children are going through in some parts of the world,
But
and
that is it, yeah.
it's just, you know, so any kind of you know, anything that's damaging to any type of human is tough. So, you know, when you see such joy in young little children, and while other children are suffering, yeah, you know, it so, you know, on that vein, like, you looking at what you're doing and campaigning in such a brilliant way, and so after the Turn Off the Red Light campaign and the End Demand legislation, uh, where have you been since then? So what was next on your very creditable target achievement list?
Um, I was reading the question, so I didn't get the last bit of what you said. Sorry.
You know, there's more just along the lines of, so after 2017 and the legislation part, what was next on your target
Oh, well,
path?
you see, there was passing the law, and then there's implementation of the law. Okay, so There's I learned there's two very different things, lots of law, civil statute books, and then that, you know. So then it was about implementation. So that's why the beyond exploitation, it was kind of like part two, right? We need a safe house. We need statutory funded exit routes. We need mass awareness training and the word to get out there. You can't change the law and then tell nobody you change it and expect society to change. And also, do you know this? You hear now the third national strategy on violence, gender-based violence. So it's based on the Palermo Protocol, which is has four pillars of it: policy, protection, prevention, and prosecution. And in July 2022, Ireland, the government, prostitution was formally recognised in government policy as a form of violence against women. And that's massive in the same sense that domestic violence is. So what that means is when the agency is rolling out the third national strategy, when it comes to, say, prevention, they will have to take prostitution, commercial sexual exploitation, and human trafficking for sexual exploitation into account. So that's in education, awareness, prevention. Same with prosecution. So, but it's just really, I think we're only one of I think we're the third nation in Europe that has formally recognized prostitution as a form of violence against women. So that was beyond exploitation. Now, then the position came up in Ruhama and the main role would be training. So, so I jumped to that opportunity, and I started in Ruhama a year next week. But I got to spend the last 3 weeks, my first 3 weeks, working right beside my desk at the time was beside Jennifer, who was my caseworker.
Oh, okay.
And she retired at 65. 3 weeks after I started in Ruhama, and the day she left, she said, "I'm leaving now because Ruhama is in safe hands." So it's like a full circle.
I was about to say, yeah, full circle. Yeah.
So Jesus, no, I must. Yes, it's a very special person.
Fantastic, and I'm sure no doubt you will keep connected. So we're about 20 quarter past 8 now, but we'll just to kind of maybe conclude in terms of like your story. You said like you would talk about like just exploring the sex trade and how it looks in Ireland today. So the work, the activity of Ruhama in terms of the landscape today, right? Because you look at legislation, you're looking to implement ways to, like tackle it. Where are you at with, although you're only a year in, which can be a very short time.
Oh, well, I'm working on the issue in 12 years. So, but so the sex trade in Ireland is it's estimated there's about 1,100 women. It'll always be an estimate, because we'll never fully know. Over 90% are migrant women. So most women involved in the sex trade are not Irish, and they come from Eastern European countries and Africa, and we have a growing number of Brazilian women. Now, there's a reason why it's Eastern European, because they are the developing nations of Europe. So with that, you have a lack of education opportunities. You can have domestic legislation that doesn't even, like even their domestic violence legislation, certainly don't have social welfare systems like we have. You don't have the institutional settings that we have. You can have a lot of police corruption. So
this is the harsh realities of
it is. So in other words, they are the recruitment spot for traffickers and pimps because of all those reasons. The demand comes from the west of Europe, and it is fed, for want of a better word, from women, young women in Eastern European or in Africa. Especially, in fact, if you were to, they call it Monday slavery, you know, you've been trafficking for a reason, because having you in the train in two maps. One is a map of Africa in the slavery in the historical sense, and then if you put a map of slavery in the modern day slavery, there isn't much difference where they are, you know.
And
So,
why then, you know, the countries you mentioned, the regions you mentioned, why Ireland? And what is human trafficking? And you know, in terms of Ireland today and the sex trade today, because you know, why 1,100 women here, or whatever that number may be, and why isn't it being prevented?
well,
For such a developed country, right? I mean, in a
yeah,
sense.
yeah, but it isn't about, it's about traffickers and pimps ruled by fear. So in nowadays they don't need sort of chains and locking up women, okay, because they've usually done a bit of homework. They know where to go. So many of the women are tricked or deceived. We see it over and over again in Ruhama. We are coming from Romania or Ukraine or wherever to Ireland for a new job, a new life, whether a reception or nanny or something, and they get here and that job doesn't exist, and you owe us this much money, and this is how you pay us off. And if you don't, we know where your daughter is. We know where your mother is, right? So they rule by fear, that kind of fear. Now, if they resist, they can be beaten and raped. Okay, so they rule. That's
So it's literally like a scam, like a scam where
yes,
they
yes, yes.
they might
It's
even have
like
like websites or you know
yes, yes.
brochures about a role, or and then they're
No,
literally scammed.
no. Sometimes they break them in a little bit, but in their home country. And sometimes they call it the LBoy system. So say, you know, kids from the orphanages, they still have orphanages in certain places, or like in Ireland we have residential care homes which are also being targeted. I was did a training session with Tulsa this morning, and they're being specifically targeted. So these young girls, maybe 15, 16, 17, they get a boyfriend and he's lovely to them, and they get some gifts and whatever, but really it's just grooming. It's grooming to be used, sexually exploited in Dublin. Sometimes they video them doing sex acts and they bribe them with that, and then they sell those videos to OnlyFans. So it's so they know where the vulnerable young girls will be, whether it's in our own residential care homes or in the ones in Romania. But sometimes the boyfriend then says, "Oh, I have a cousin in Dublin or whatever. Come over," and they come over, and then he may sell her off because it's worth she'd be worth a lot of money. And or he may keep her. There was one fella is arrested, and he had four of these young girlfriends in different cities in Europe, all sending back, all sending money. They make the arrangements. So it's really by fear. There's about could be about 40 gangs running prostitution rackets around Ireland. So it's highly organized and criminally run. It's very rare that you get an independent person. Now, you may get women who believe they are, you know, independent and such, but if some of those websites to advertise, you know, they charge 1,000 a month. And then you can have, you know, landlords who know they're involved in prostitution, charging them 700 a month, a week rent and stuff like that. So I also remember one woman saying, "My pimp was the website." Um, yeah, and then women, you can become entrenched in the sex trade. I didn't have it. I wasn't trafficked. I got on two buses. I got on the 46, you know, but I was entrenched and I couldn't see a way out. So the longer you're there, sometimes they're drugs. And often, and if they speak to the police, they they may be threatened if they find out, or else one of the girls may be badly beaten, but it'll be in front of the others, and it's very hard to challenge. So that's the problem with the police, is that our system, the burden of proof lies heavy on a traumatized victim. And with trauma comes complex post-traumatic stress. And with that comes concentration disorder, comes memory, gets mixed up, which a defense attorney could chew apart. So often the trafficking cases, we've only one successful one here. There is another one in the court, that it's often trafficking cases that so traffickers or pimps can get charged with, you know, sort of bringing in someone into the country illegally, false documentation, living off the earnings of prostitution, that sort of thing. So there might be 5 or 6 charges, and they'll plead guilty to 4. So it often falls into organized prostitution charges, and not trafficking charges, because our bar for a trafficking charge is extremely high. So that's why. But it's
And do you think Ireland is in a good place to go tackle or target or
absolutely
figure this out?
The only way, if any nation is really serious about tackling sex trafficking, then you have to look at the cause. You have to look at the reason it exists in the first place. The only reason any woman is ever trafficked from any country to anywhere else is because there's a man at the other end waiting to pay for it. That's the only reason they're trafficked. So unless you tackle the demand, it will continue. And reduce the demand in anything, and the supply diminishes. And that's an analytic truth. It's like 2 + 2 is 4. So it can't be argued. If it's not working, then it's its implementation. Okay, it's not the logic of the law. It is the strongest proven legislative tool. So say, like, let's say if Sweden changed their law, that they had the same laws as 20 years ago now, and Germany did the complete opposite. They legalized the whole thing. And even taking population figures into account, Germany's sex trade is 40 times higher than Sweden's. Because if you legalize, or sometimes people say, and I see the word there in the question, decriminalize, decriminalization, but they leave out the first word, full decriminalization is legalization. It's just with legalization, a bit of state intervention and whatever, and it's the same thing. It just lands softer. But anywhere you do that, all you do overnight is give every pimp and trafficker the green light to sell, and sell as many as you want. That's all you do, and that is proven. That's improving in the Netherlands, and you just have to look at the figures, that comparison. Sometimes people say compare Ireland to New Zealand. We're both islands off the coast of continents. We're approximately the same population. And they did the full decriminalization now quite a bit before we did the Nordic model. But their sex trade is 6 times higher than ours. So it works, but if it's not working, then it's the implementation and the support, the statutory funded exit routes, etc. Okay. So they're the things we need to complete.
So you're looking at.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So I am going to, as I always do, see if anybody would like to say hello and ask a question. I know Alwyn has put in a couple of comments. Which
yes, thank you so much.
You've been kind enough to answer, helping me in my
well, I can answer that question. Barbara had asked. The happy hookers to say, So it's not illegal to sell sex in Ireland. So if there are, we last year Ruhama supported just under 500 women. At the moment we've about 300 active service users. So there's somewhere in our service, could be in education, but we've about 30 to 35 women who are still selling sex. And you know, there's, because sometimes there's a plan. You know, the way say domestic violence victims, it can take on average 6 attempts to leave. It's the same stats for prostitution. Okay, because sometimes it needs to take a plan, because we're combating trust, we're combating fear, do you know what I mean? So, but if you so we've always said there's a tiny minority of women who'd say they want to be there, they're happy to be there, and we know that, but this law is not about them. It's about the vast majority of women who don't, and are being and the wider societal impacts of leaving it the way it was. So, but at the same time, we have there was a few women who were viciously physically assaulted with a weapon. They were selling sex. They're still selling sex, 2 of them, and we supported them in their trial, and they got a conviction. So we don't. It's not a requirement to leave. What it is most people's wishes, but they need to work on things. But you can't balance. There are people who say, I want to be there, I make good money, I choose my hours, it's my body. Yeah, but you're weighing it up about, do you know what I mean? With against horrendous rate. It's like, sometimes I think if it's like if you picture a factory, and at so there's the line, the factory lines where all the workers are working, and then at the top there's the offices, you know, there's the foreman and the secretary, and they're all grand. Their office doors, you can only knock and make an appointment, and they'll see you, and they're happy to only see the people they want to see, and they get paid much better. Okay, but the factory line is getting beaten, and they're getting abused, and they're getting raped. Would you close the factory? Absolutely you would. Now, the consequences for the foreman and the secretary and the protected people is they have to find a new job. And that is something we've all had to do.
I mean, I even saw watching Newsnight last night about McDonald's in the UK, where your managers were moved around for groping junior staff. So like like all these little things go on that people hide behind, and that's a huge corporation, and they were trying to brush something like that under the carpet. So like
Yeah.
we're doing tackling things like this is fantastic. I'm going to see if anybody would like to raise their hand, because that typically means we're going to have somebody say hello directly. So I'm going to see, and the first one I see is Aoife. Aoife, if you're kind enough to unmute and say hi, please do.
Hi, thank you, Mia, for sharing your incredibly inspiring story so openly. Mia, I just wanted to ask you, I'm a teacher, and I was just wondering, what happened to your daughter during this chaotic time, and is there anything that we as teachers could do to support children who are living in a family that may not be functioning as well as one would?
Yeah, it's my daughter didn't realize at the first. I would have lied and said I was going to. I went out to see about 2 or 3 nights a week. That she thought I worked in a restaurant or somewhere, because so I brought my clothes with me in the bag. But eventually, look, she found out, and yeah, it was. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Now there's only me and her, and because I didn't trust the world and I didn't want the world, she stayed indoors, and it was me and her, and I didn't. Now that had a detrimental effect. I thought it was protecting, keep this bad world away from her, but she developed anorexia, because she couldn't save mommy, she couldn't protect me, but the one thing she could control was what she put in her mouth. Okay, now we're very lucky that I got help for her, and there was this homeschool, and Katrina was her name. She'd come out twice a week and set Blonid some work, and then the iSchool system. You know, they come and they give you a computer. So she had some support there. I think so. She was in mainstream until the beginning, the first and second year. It's very hard for children who have who know the mothers were or are involved in prostitution, because they're at risk of being called names and being ostracized. I mean, it's only, I've spoken publicly many years, but I mean, it's only 4 months since my daughter got a messenger message to say, I believe your mother was on the game. I wonder, does the apple fall from the tree? Are you up for it? I sometimes think, oh God, why didn't I keep my mouth shut? I think if, as a teacher, if you're aware that there's dysfunction or addiction and there's a mum involved, that she may be watching her mother being hurt. She may be making her mother a cup of tea when she spends so many hours on the street. And she may, do you know what I mean? So it's just kindness and not judgment. And I think if often they say, if there's a disclosure, is that to take that often women in particular find themselves in addiction are often exploited. And if that's happening to your mum, or you can come, because it's not, as your mother, and call a name. It's like you're aware that, I think it's sometimes it's changing the question around, but never underestimate the power of a kind word or a gesture, because often it's that one person, and then if it is, if there isn't a conversation, but then if it ever a stage a child wants to talk, they'll remember the person, because they already have a sense that that something's not quite right, and there has. But it is really hard for children who are have had to watch the mothers, and they hear the names they call. It's really hard. It's really hard on them. So I don't have a big answer, but I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
and I think it's really important, because often people forget the children of prostituted women. And many of them are the children of sex buyers, and that's really hard to process, and they're often forgotten in this. Yeah.
I mean, Mia, like I guess for Aoife, the whole topic. I mean, you hear it on the radio, and you're talking about looking at banishing mobile phones and blocking phones for primary school children, secondary school children. Is Ruhama looking at with working with teachers or the education system on all of the online elements to this for young girls and boys? I mean, is that a facet of your work as well?
I think, well, I'm always trying, I hope now next year in 24 to have more, do more talks, not so much training, but talks in hopefully transition year students, and explain the law as well, that they get a sense that consent cannot be purchased. With the online, it is SERP, which is the Sexual Exploitation Research Project, that will be doing a piece online, and that's a piece of research that's been done with Women's Aid and SERP, so we use them a lot for our research. Ruhama, it's about linking pornography and the effects of pornography, and that is online. So we will. I don't know what it's going to be called or anything, but that's probably for 2024 will be linking pornography to sexual exploitation and yeah, exposure to it. Because often it's and people involved in prostitution are often the ones that porn watchers are play out it for in real life, and it's the violence, etc., has gone you know, a lot higher because of the influence of pornography, because it's the one cohort, or they feel it's the cohort of women that you can do this stuff and get away with it. Not so much anymore. Since we changed the law, we have 9 successful convictions against rape or sexual assault on prostituted women. We had 1 before we changed this law. So now they do tend to be on the very grave, high level of violence, because violence is so endemic in prostitution that you get used to a certain amount of it. So it's only when it gets really extreme that you kind of go, oh, you know, that now they're going, well, actually, that's not it, you know. So, but it's a big step forward that there are, you know, we've got a fantastic unit, the Organised Prostitution Investigation Unit. So there's 7 cops, and I'll tell you, they're fabulous. And they have 2 mobile phones they never turn off, and they do the welfare checks. So they don't do raids anymore, they carry out welfare checks. So if they know of a brothel or a place, they will visit, and they kind of have 2 hats on. They have like a social work hat on, but they also have the police hat on, because 1 in 4 traffickers in Europe are women. So they also have to keep note that is one of these women in charge, is the someone, do you know what I mean? But it's to build up trust in the police, because like I said before, many come from countries where there's a lot of police corruption. So it's to combat that. So we get referrals from the guards, and yeah, it's just changing the way we look, because we also asked, when we changed the law, our police force to, hey, remember how you dealt with this issue historically? Well, now you have to deal with it in a completely different way. So, but we didn't do any specialized training, except ad hoc kind of ones. So next year, well, it's actually starting in December, it'll be rolled out. And I hope that even though OPIU unit is fantastic, but I want that the local guard in Ennis or wherever also knows the script when he goes to do a welfare check, knows how to treat the women, etc., etc. So,
Dominic, I believe you were hand raised. If you are still there and you'd like to ask a question, please do go ahead.
Thanks, Mia. Mia, speaking of social media, I've often seen in the past, although not so much lately, people's biographies on Twitter or X. They might include the words "no swerfs."
No which?
Swerf. I think it means sex workers.
Oh, I know the words. Yeah.
I thought it was something to do with Smurfs or something.
Well, yes. Some years ago I was called it, but I thought she said Smurf.
Yeah. It's I guess a lot of the people who have those biographies are female. They are advocates for sex workers empowering. They are advocates for and it always seemed to me to be really almost like a case of Stockholm syndrome, you know, that they don't see the huge patriarchal involvement in all of sex work. They simply don't see it. They see it as females, sisters standing up for themselves.
Yeah.
How do you
well, on a very simple level, I remember another survivor saying, you know, nobody ever gave me 50 euros and said, do what you want with your own body.
Yeah.
They already know what they want to do with your body. It is about them and what they want and their needs. It is, yeah, with young women in particular, sort of 18 to 22, 24, and in particular coming out of university.
Yeah, and why do you think that is?
I think that academia, in particular, it's not all. It's like certainly wasn't the philosophy department in do you know what I mean? It's it tends to be the sociology departments. And so the research and stuff is all filtered through pro lobbies. So they would be pro prostitution academics. So if you were studying sociology and you wanted to do your undergrad as a thesis, then you would be assigned to a pro prostitution academic. Okay. You know.
But why do you think this prevalence is here? Like, is it a part of the?
It's because they conflate sexual exploitation with sexual liberation. They conflate it. It's conflated. You know, sexual liberation is a good thing. Do you know what I mean? It's a good thing. And that's especially in our, you know, we've marriage equality. You can, and it's a good, you can express yourself. You can have wonderful connections, whether they're one night, whether they're, do you know what I mean? You can love who we love, but like it, but you can't buy who you like.
Yeah,
You
I
can
think it's
love,
the transactional. It is the transactional quality that they're missing in
it
that.
is,
You know,
it is, yeah.
your comment about, you know, you can't buy consent is fantastic, because
Yeah.
you often see they're the same people who advocated for repeal. Like, you know, I guess we all
Oh,
do.
it's this day, yeah, it's yeah.
But it's this thing, and I've never really been able to get my head around it like that. You know, it's so obvious to me, but you know, those couples.
But it's still, and to them, like I say, it's still it's not a crime to sell sex. So if you actually are determined, do you know what I mean? It's not a crime. So we haven't removed the right for you to sell sexual access to your body if that's your wish. What we have said no to is men going online and going, well, I'll have a black one or a white one or a pregnant one or a young one, or driving down the street. Well, there's very few women on the street now, but driving down and saying, well, I'll have that emaciated, addicted woman to do this. It's that's sort of supermarket commodity. It's that we had to stop. But the selling, if that's what you wish, is not a crime. You know, so I don't know. It's a little, I don't know. It's hard because the like some of the women we see, especially from Africa, that have never had a chance of an education, and the big cohort of people that stand and would remove this law for them and remove certain things are the ones walking out of university. And I'm going, oh my goodness.
I think maybe as you've documented, you know, it's an ideology, and the ideologies work fine until the rubber hits the road.
Well, that's it. Yeah, it's the substance.
It's awful, it's banal, it's horrible, it's cold, it's cruel, it's all of those things.
Yeah, it's not. There isn't a substance. I remember. I don't speak at university. Well, unless it's a sort of a lecture to a particular group in the academics. But it's. Oh, I've lost my train of thought. I was going to say something. It's
University.
Oh, it'll come back to me.
You're talking about young girls coming out of university or something?
Yeah, and they, oh goodness. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's gone.
Thanks anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks for your great insight and your brilliant presentation tonight.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. I see.
Thank you, Dominic. Yeah, listen, just while you've been engaged there, you know, just some of the lovely comments that we're seeing from
thank
Jackie.
You so much.
Jackie, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story. Wishes you continued success in your life. Similarly from Neil, thank you for your personal story. It's highly motivating and inspiring. And then from Jackie, such a strong woman with bravery to be admired. It would have been easier to keep your head then. So thank you so much. That's a quick kind of glance of the room. Have we anybody else who'd like to perhaps ask one final question? I know as always, we tend to run over time.
There is a question there. Does that suggest there's very little consequence for those who buy sex? The problem with the implementing the law side of it for sex buyers is that we're the only country out of the 7 nations in Europe that have changed the law. The guards don't have on-the-spot fines. So in France and in there's Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Northern Ireland, France, Israel, and Canada has the same law. They have on-the-spot fines. The guards here don't have on-the-spot fines. Evidence has to be collected, sent to the DPP. The DPP decides if this man was actually there, or did he promise to pay? So it's time consuming, and it's not. So that's the struggle. And also the way it's written, it's promise to pay. So sex buyers have kind of copped on that if they don't admit to, so we're hoping the law is up for review next year, and we're hoping that is one of the major changes that will be made, that give the police on the spot fines, so they can target the demand as it was supposed to. So that's yeah.
Thank you for answering that, very kind. Dara Hogan, good evening.
Yeah, one last question. You certainly are inspirational. Thank you for that. Can I ask you, it's kind of the obvious question, and the world's oldest profession and all that stuff. Can the problem be resolved, or can we only ameliorate it? And a second question is, do you know Adrienne Malloy, whom I worked with for a number of years?
Adrienne, yes, I do. Yeah, very well, yeah. She's fantastic, yeah.
It's a great person.
Yeah. It's a small world, Dublin. Okay, well, oldest, it's not. Midwifery is the oldest profession in the world.
Very good.
Midwifery.
Excellent.
So what? Okay. When we say we want to end prostitution and sex trafficking with this, but really in this world, there will always be people who will exploit the vulnerable, So this law doesn't solve the problem with the human condition. It doesn't solve that. But what it does do is put a cap, so to speak, on the situation as we are in Ireland, with 1,100 women, with the traffickers getting away, with the criminal gangs. So it puts a cap on it. So if you target them, put a cap on it. And when you put a cap, so it can't grow any further. But and it hasn't really grown in the last 6 years. But when you put a cap on something, then you can poke holes in it, so to speak, with policy, with education, with the statutory funded exit routes, with instilling a system. So we didn't, like Sweden's law is 20 years old. It still has a certain level of prostitution. So I think, but like some people say that it won't end it, but we have loads of legislation for crimes. Like rape is a crime, burglary is a crime. They still happen. So it doesn't mean you don't have laws to stop it, because then you're saying all legislation is redundant, and it's not. But most people don't burgle, and most people don't. Do you know what I mean? So to put a cap on it and then poke holes in it with the other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. A great answer.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dara. So I can see, Alwyn was very pleased with your answer to that particular question. I think you really ably answered all the questions that have been rapidly fired across, and so we're really thankful of you answering everything.
No problem.
So at this point, what we like to do is say, first of all, thank you, everybody. You know, I'm sure we'll say the same, and we get thumbs up and hands up and you know, round of applause in
And thank
digital
you.
mode, as hard as that can be. But you know, I think tonight particularly has been very much. It doesn't feel like digital. It really feels like we've been all together in a room, and
Yeah,
I'm so thankful your Wi-Fi and my Wi-Fi and everybody else is working really great tonight, because we really got that sense tonight that we're all together. So just thank you, and what we like to do is give you the final word. So please, if you have your final word.
Oh, now if I'd known, I could have the nice philosophical quote. Jesus.
I know this is something that we've kind of come up with as we've gone along with these talks. If you'd watched all the talks to the very end, you could have been more prepared. But that says you didn't watch them all to the very end.
To the
That's
very
good.
end.
So thankfully we had that in our back pocket. So please, final word.
I think I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I believe that social change for the greater good, if it's backed up by the humans in it, is not just a possibility, it is in fact inevitable. To know disconnections, human connections. And before we were anything, we're human. I was thinking that when I was out on the street, before you're anything, you're human. And then sometimes I'm just teaching empathy, because the ability to empathize with the prostituted is really blocked. And I think it's with this group, it's that's my job, to unblock it and unpick it. And I don't know. We all have a responsibility to leave this place a better place, don't we? For the next generation.
I think you did watch to the end, because that's too good.
Oh, I didn't. Maybe because I was trying to get a sense, but I didn't see anybody's actual end. But I'm glad to.
Really brilliant. So look, I think on that note, just again, thank you. I certainly believe this won't be the end of our connect. You know, Humanism Ireland is always about learning and listening. So I hope we can keep learning and listening from you. We'll ask for your permission, you know, about putting the talk on our YouTube channel, as always. And if you want to share to us any links or campaign information, we can get that out in our Humanism e-magazine that we have. We do monthly, so we're more than happy to
that'd be great.
Share your story and share the associations.
And if anybody has a question, you know, it's said a lot to process. It's just mia@ruhama.ie. That's it. It's very easy.
We'll
I don't mind at all.
Yeah, we'll do a little a summary, and we'll write a little summary as well, so we can put in your contact details to allow people to learn more about Ruhama. So on that note, thank you for that. Thank you for your time. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Certainly, you know, we've heard and listened to a lot. So to everybody who joined, as always, thank you so much for your time, and
thank you so much for the kind words. I really, it's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, again, final words coming through, illuminating, and indeed learn about campaigns. So, so big thank you. Okay.
Right.
So on that note, I shall say good night, and I'll stop the recording soon. But for those who want to just leave and goodbye, thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.